So, Chris Pratt, right. The actor always seems to be in some huge blockbuster.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Big action star. Making us laugh, too.
Yeah. But recently I came across something he shared that was kind of different. I don't know if you saw this. It was this really personal story about the birth of his son. It was a really tough situation, I guess, back when his son was born.
Oh, interesting. So like a behind-the-scenes look at a celebrity going through something very difficult.
Yeah, exactly. It wasn't just, the typical celebrity news. It was a really personal, very vulnerable thing to share. And it really got me thinking about how these kinds of experiences shape people's lives, especially their faith. And that's what we're gonna dive into today. I found this article on Fox News that talks about some of his recent comments.
Okay, so the goal today is not so much celebrity gossip, but more, what can we understand about faith, about these big life moments, and how they change people?
Exactly. So this all kind of goes back to when his son Jack was born. That was back in 2012 with his then wife Anna Faris.
Right.
And it wasn't the typical happy, easy birth.
Oh no.
Yeah. He was born 7 weeks premature. I mean, can you imagine?
Wow.
Yeah. Only 3 pounds and 10 ounces.
Oh my gosh, that's so tiny. That's gonna be really scary.
I know. And the article really emphasizes, how serious it was, the health challenges that Jack faced. You think about Pratt and Faris, they must have been going through just so much worry, feeling so helpless.
Absolutely. I mean, in those moments, you really feel how little control you have.
Totally. And it was right in the middle of all that fear and uncertainty that Pratt talks about, making these deals with God.
Deals with God.
Yeah. He literally says, in that moment, I really made some deals with God, as you do when you're praying. And I felt like if you save my son, I will give you everything.
Wow, I will give you everything. That's powerful.
I know, right? You can just feel like the raw emotion. It's just this desperate plea coming out of this place of just intense need.
It's really human, isn't it? When we're in a crisis, we look for something bigger than ourselves.
Right. It's like this deep instinct to reach out to something beyond ourselves. And what's really interesting is what he says when he talks about everything. He goes on to say, I'll give you my life. I'll give you my platform. I won't be ashamed to talk to you or talk about you.
So it wasn't just like a quick prayer in the heat of the moment.
No, not at all. It sounds like this profound commitment. Like if his son survived, he would actually, reorient his entire life.
Yeah, a real turning point.
Yeah. And the article makes it clear, he believes that God did save his son.
Yeah.
And that belief seems to be like at the core of how he talks about his faith now.
It's like this foundation for everything he's saying and doing publicly, at least.
Exactly. And he actually says, I've been trying to make good on that promise ever since. It's like this ongoing thing, this guiding principle.
Which is interesting because it brings us to where he's choosing to share all this.
Right. The article mentions his appearance on Fox and Friends, and then also his partnership with the Hello Prayer app. And it's like, it's all connected.
Right, like it's all part of fulfilling that promise he made. And it's interesting, the choice of Fox and Friends, that has a particular audience, a largely conservative audience.
Yeah, and the Hello app too. It's specifically a faith-based app. So it seems very deliberate. Like he's making a choice to be very open, very intentional about his faith.
Right. It's like he's actively looking for ways to use his platform, his fame, in a way that aligns with that promise.
Totally. And it's not just like a quiet thing for him. In the article, he straight up calls faith the best part of his life. And he says that in his Fox and Friends interview.
It's pretty strong, especially coming from, someone so famous in an industry that's not always associated with open expressions of faith.
I know, right? It's not exactly the norm in Hollywood. Yeah, I think it's really interesting to see some celebrities like him becoming more vocal about their faith.
Yeah, it's like this bigger trend, maybe a shift in, society, maybe. Or maybe it's just individuals who feel strongly enough that they're willing to speak out, even if it might, be controversial.
Right. And it definitely makes you think about, what role faith should play in public life. What are the expectations for celebrities?
Absolutely.
There's also something else he talks about in that Fox and Friends interview that I thought was interesting. He mentions how he thinks it's a tough time to be a kid these days. And he blames smartphones, the anxiety that they can cause.
Yeah, that's a huge concern for a lot of people, this whole digital age, the impact of being constantly connected, social media. It's a lot for kids to handle.
Totally. And it's interesting how, he seems to be connecting those societal challenges to the role of faith. Like faith can offer a sense of stability, or peace in the middle of all that.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And then that brings us to the Hallow app. And it sounds like for him, it's not just about, endorsing a product. He actually says it's a tool for understanding Jesus better, getting into a routine of prayer. And he even uses this phrase, put on the armor of God every day.
Armor of God. I mean, that's a pretty strong image, right?
Definitely. It's very biblical. Do you think you could explain that metaphor for anyone who's not familiar?
Sure. So in the Bible, that image of the armor of God is often used to talk about spiritual resilience, like protection against the challenges of life. It's about, drawing strength from your faith, using it as a defense.
Right. And the article goes on to talk about the Hallow app itself, how it fits into the faith community. Apparently, it's backed by some pretty big names.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, like Mark Wahlberg.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Jonathan Rumi, he plays Jesus in The Chosen. That's a really popular show.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of that.
So having those guys involved definitely gives the app some credibility within that community.
Absolutely. And they have this really interesting feature. The article talks about it. They have these 365 podcasts, and they guide you through the whole Bible in a year.
Wow, the whole Bible in a year.
Yeah. And Pratt talks about how helpful that is. Because the Bible can be pretty intimidating for people. It's a lot to read.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So the app breaks it down into smaller pieces, bite-sized pieces, he says. And they read it out loud. They explain things.
That's so smart. It's like having a guide, to help you navigate this huge text.
Totally. It's about making it more accessible, less daunting. And it fits with what he said earlier about a routine of prayer. It's about building that consistent spiritual practice.
Makes sense.
And it's a really good example of how technology is being used in faith. It's creating these new ways for people to connect with their beliefs.
Absolutely. And the article also talks about how Pratt is observing Lent this year.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. He's giving up sugar and social media.
Yeah.
And he explains what Lent is. 40 days of prayer, fasting, and almsgiving that begins on Ash Wednesday and leads up to Easter.
Okay.
And I think, him participating in those traditions seems pretty deliberate.
Yeah.
It's like he's making a conscious effort to focus on his faith.
Right. It's like he's trying to eliminate distractions, modern distractions especially, so he can focus on those spiritual disciplines.
Yeah. And for anyone listening who's not familiar with Lent, almsgiving is basically acts of charity, giving to those in need. It's one of the pillars of Lent, along with prayer and fasting.
Okay.
So the article ends by giving us a bit of a glimpse into his family life. It mentions, his previous marriage to Anna Faris, how they co-parent Jack now that they're divorced.
Right.
And then, of course, his current marriage to Catherine Schwarzenegger. They got married in June 2019. And they met at church, which I think is pretty interesting. And apparently Maria Shriver, Arnold Schwarzenegger's ex-wife, she set them up.
Oh, wow, really? That's funny. Small world.
Right. And they have 2 daughters now. Lila was born in August 2020.
Okay.
And Eloise was born in May 2022.
Yeah.
So, he's got this whole family life. And it seems really important to him.
It definitely adds another layer to, his faith journey. It's not happening in isolation. It's all intertwined with his family, his relationships.
Absolutely. And I think, when we look at everything, the main takeaway here is how much that experience with his son, Jack, being born premature, how much that impacted him. It seems like it was a turning point in his faith. It led to this really deep commitment that he feels he made to God.
Yeah, totally. And it's affected, everything from how he talks about his faith publicly to his involvement with the Hallow app, and even his thoughts on the challenges that kids face today.
It's a powerful example of how, these really difficult personal experiences can end up shaping our beliefs, our values in really unexpected ways.
And that brings up a question for all of you listening. Think about those moments in your own life where you've been through something really tough, something that really challenged you, and how did that experience change you? How did it affect your worldview, your beliefs, your faith, if you have one? It's a really personal journey, but it's something we all go through in our own way, and I think Chris Pratt's story is a really fascinating example of that.
Totally.
So that's all for today.
Until next time.
Bye, everyone.